Hi guys, it's so good to have you on the maiden edition of our government tutorials. Today we are just going to be looking at the introductory part of our government subject. That entails the definition of government, the functions of government, and why exactly we will need government in any society. So you stay through with us and we are going to have a good time together. So, we are going to be looking at the definition of government. Like every question, everyone would ask, what is government? Now, government, is it just the bodies that make these laws? Is it just the art of governing? Is it just the subjects you learn in the class? Well, I tell you that all these things comprise government. Now, as an institution of the state, a government can be looked at or seen to be the body, the agency, whatever group of people who have come together to make laws, to administer them for the functioning of a society. That is government. Now, the persons are government. The institution in itself will be the agency that makes these laws that govern the society. That's an institution. So government can be seen as an institution or a body, a machinery by which the state, the society, your community is governed. Now again, we'll be looking at government as an art of governing. So the process by which these laws are executed, this particular acts. So when things, sometimes you don't pay your rent, your rates, your taxes, and there are people who would come after you. Now that act, that is a government acting for the state. Ordinarily the state is you cannot place anybody to be the state, but through these actions, which is occasioned by some people, you would say the government has done this. So the process, the act itself, those activities, that is government. So as an art of governing, you would say government are those people who, by their implementations, by the policies, formulations, and execution, they actually bring to establishment the mind of the state. We would also look at government as an academic field of study. So now you would go to school and you're taught government as a course. Why do you even need to learn that? It's an academic field, it's a social science subject that you must necessarily know to improve your knowledge about governance and political administration. So as a social science subject, it includes the study of political institutions in the state, the political ideas, the values, the doctrines of politics of your state. So when you learn that, we learn the subject government, that also can be said to be government. So when you proceed to higher institutions, you have courses like political science, political administration, comparative politics, and also many other courses that you could study in the university just so you would understand what government really is. So I believe you would have in your minds now like certain things playing out to be government. And so I have coined together a short definition that can really project what government actually is. So I said it is a group of people who come together to set, administer public policies, and exercises executive, political, and sovereign power through customs, institutions, and laws within a state. Oh, that may sound so big. So if we break it down, it would be a group of people who make laws. Now there has to be a making, and then they administer those laws, which could be public policies. They administer them, they run them, they make sure they are enforced. It's no use when you make laws and they are not enforceable. So it is still government who makes sure that these laws are enforced in the state. So they exercise power in a bid to enforce these laws. It could be executive powers, it could be the legislative powers, that is the powers to even make the laws, it could be political powers and several other powers as we proceed in our study, we'll get to understand power and how it works, the various types of power. So they wield powers to make sure that these laws are put on the run, that they are enforceable through institutions, through agencies, through customs, and of course the legislations that we have in our state. So I believe now that you already in your mind can really interpret what government is. It's basically a group of people who make laws, administer them, and make sure that they are enforced. Alright, so we would go to the need for government. Why do we need government in the first place in our societies? Why don't we just run our lives the way we want it? Well, we have several needs that government solves. One could be conflict management. And so you'd know that ordinary relationship with people will bring about conflicts and arguments and quarrels. So we have laws, we have legislations, we have things put in place to make sure that human relationships are managed. Where there are no laws, people could do anything. And there is a popular saying that where your right ends, the right of another begins. And so if there are no laws, basically people would just ride on other people's rights and there will be no cause for alarm. So government has come in place to make sure that conflicts are managed. Lawmaking. Of course, the bid to manage our conflicts, there has to be laws put in place. So we have the legislature. Even in our local assemblies, we have the legislature. We have at the federal level, at the state level, of course at the local level, where laws are put in place to make sure that there is a smooth running in the state. That's why you need the government. Provision of social amenities. Now, one person by himself cannot possibly give us good roads, potable water, electricity, and so many social amenities that we need for human existence. And so these people who we call government make sure through several means, they try all what they can just to make sure that we are comfortable. We have long span of roads that need to be worked on. Personally, you would not want to volunteer to do that, maybe, just in case you don't have so large a heart to want to contribute to the society. But these roads need be worked on. And so we need people who would do them. And that's what government does. They give us light, they give us water, they give us all the possible social amenities that we would need for good and healthy existence. Now, maintenance of law and order. Like I had already said, there will be so much chaos in the society if there are no laws, and it will be worse off if there are laws and there are no persons to enforce these laws. And so why do we make laws? They are not enforceable. We have the police, we have several other executive arms who would help us to enforce these laws, to make sure that these laws are brought to being. And so when you flout or you breach any of these laws, there will be authorities on the way to capture you and make sure that the appropriate punishments are meted out to you. And so fear of sanctions actually put people in their right places. So where there are no laws or possible sanctions, people just go about their lives and still do what they want to do. Defense of the country. You would agree with me that nobody would stand up for your country like your government will. And so where there are threats to the administration of your country or to citizens of a country in another country, your government would stand up to it, put their foot down and say no to the ills done to the citizens outside the country, or to make sure that the good reputation of the country is projected. Protection of lives and property. Where there is no government, anything can happen. People who are of extreme angers would definitely just run the properties of our communities down, destroy things, burn down buildings, and make sure that things are not the way they are supposed to do. But government makes sure that our lives are protected. When you have people running after you, when you're threatened by reason of anything at all, we have the police and several other agencies that you can run to make sure that your life is safe. Provision of employment. By creation of several agencies, government makes sure that we have work to do. We are ordinarily expected to pay our taxes and give back to the society, and so work has to be provided for us just so that we can have what means to give back to the society. So government makes provision for employment for every graduate, and of course there are entrepreneurial measures set up by government just to make sure that even persons who are not educated can be carried along in employment. And administration of justice, you would agree with me that nobody else can set your rights in place except the government. And so something goes wrong, people take your things forcefully, you have your rights trampled upon, you just have to go to the appropriate authorities set out. Of course, the courts are there to make sure that rights are restored and justice is achieved. These are many more, so much more that we can learn, all that government can do for us. And so the need for government can never ever be overemphasized. Now we're going to be looking at why we study government. Why do we even have to study government at all? I mean, we can just let things slide, but we have to know the types of government available to know which is the appropriate to adopt in our country. There are several and so many types of government operational in the world. So your knowledge of government would help you to know the appropriate government to adopt. Now, political education and participation. Yes, we also educate people on politics, what it takes to get into politics, several things about it, politics in the whole essence, the party system, the available political spheres that people can thrive in, so you would know, just in case you have an interest or there is this big idea you have for your community, you really want to bring it to be, what is the appropriate platform that you can be involved with to make sure these ideas come to play. So political education and participation is what you also get when you study government. To know your duties and obligations. Every citizen has a civic duty to the state. You get to know about what things you owe your state, to acquire leadership skills and qualities, to know your fundamental rights. There are several things you get to understand when you study government. And so there are so many things to learn. In our courses ahead, you will get to understand so much more about government. I am very sure you've had a good time in this introductory class. And so in our subsequent classes, we are going to have so much about government talked about. So do find out those videos and watch them.